the recording is the work. And that was something which I decided very early on, that I wanted to see what happens, what you can do musically, what you can do compositionally, if you say, this is not a piece of music that's to be performed, the recording is the final thing. It's like a sculpture, whether you think of it as a sculpture or a painting or a fixed form, whatever it is, that's the final work. The work culminates in a recording rather than a performance. And I think there's pros and cons to it. I mean, you lose a lot of wonderful things that take place in performance, but I think it gives you some other opportunities to experiment in different directions. I see that as really just one of the basic axioms of my work, that the recording is the thing. So when you go to my site, and this is another part where the site kind of figures into it, you go to my site and you download a full res version, one of the pieces, you have the thing itself. You have the actual work. No different from what's on my hard drive. It's not a copy, it's an identical same thing. You've actually got the work itself right there on your computer or on your iPod. I do feel very strongly that I'm not a composer who wants to hit you with a lot of esoteric, and I use a lot of esoteric, weird methods in my writing. And I don't want you to listen to the piece of music of mine and say, oh, it was such a fascinating, interesting way that he wrote it, but oh, it sounds terrible, but it's so interesting. I want you as a listener to be interested in the end result. And if you do not like the piece of music, I don't want you to worry about how it was put together. It's like Music of Changes by Cage, which is the greatest idea for a piece of music ever. Oh, do you really want to listen to it? You got all these piano notes shooting around randomly. It's very painful to listen to in a lot of ways, even though it's very philosophically profound. And I get into this debate with friends and with colleagues. They say, we want to understand your methods. And I'm like, I can tell you about my methods, but if you don't like what you're hearing, the methods have already failed. It's not. I'm not a procedural, a process-oriented person. I'm ultimately about you having a beautiful, hopefully beautiful piece of music that you like listening to. Now, maybe if I could then make it so that there's a secret place on my website, you can then, if you actually like it already, you can find out how it was done. I always write way too much stuff. Each piece is probably 6 hours in its raw material. Because with electronic music, it's very easy to generate huge amounts of stuff. It's not like you're writing a score where you have to actually write the notes out. It's hard not to create a huge amount of sound because you set up systems and software and boom, it just goes and things happen. Then there's a process of sifting through it and trying to find meaning and trying to find structure and narrative, and that takes a long time. And to me, that's often about taking things away. It's like there's a very spontaneous process of composing and improvising and creating stuff, and then I stop, I step back, and start to analyze what's there and try to find ways to build something that hangs together and that makes sense from all that. traditional school of thought is that you have to learn the rules before you break them. And as a rebellious young kid, I did not feel that way. And there's an element of truth in that, because by the time you've learned the rules, they've gotten inside you at a very deep level. And you can only really think in the ways in which the rules tell you you can think. So to do something very different, sometimes you do need to strike off on your own. And there's tremendous risks with that. I mean, you risk doing nothing. You risk being completely deluded. You risk completely going nowhere. But to me, it seemed that that was the best way to try to do something different from what the options seemed to be for me at the time.